Before we dive into today's conversation, I have an exciting reminder for all my fellow designers and decorators. If you're ready to take your interior design business to the next level in 2025, the Profit Academy for Interior Designers is open and ready when you are. This 6-week online course is designed to help you increase your profits, take control of your business, and charge what you are truly worth. The best part? You can do it at your own pace. So whether you need it to fit into your busy schedule or you're ready to dive in and start making changes today, the Profit Academy is ready for you. With the Profit Academy, you will get a step-by-step roadmap to running a profitable design business, proven price strategies to increase confidently and profitably charge for your time and your designs, templates, worksheets, real-world tools to streamline your workflow, and the flexibility to complete the course on your schedule, because your business should work for you and not the other way around. If you're ready to get started, head to the link in the show notes, and in just 6 weeks, you could be running a more profitable and efficient design business. Now, let's get ready to talk to today's incredible guest. Today, let's talk about building a legacy in interior design. I am joined by the incredible Margaret Donaldson, founder and creative director of Margaret Donaldson Interiors. She's based out of Charleston, South Carolina, and Margaret has been creating timeless, beautiful, functional spaces for over 30 years with clients across the US and Canada. Her firm, MDI Interior Design, is known for its collaborative approach, deep-rooted in client relationships, and commitment to designing homes that truly live well. Margaret took a leap of faith when she started her business, leaving a design partnership just 3 weeks before welcoming her first child. Decades later, she has built a thriving firm that is known for bespoke interiors, a talented team, and a reputation that stands the test of time. Today, we're diving into what does it take to sustain a successful design business that lasted over 3 decades and is still thriving, and how to create a legacy brand within that, and that evolution of industry all along the way. So Margaret's passion for design runs deep, and she's here to share her insights, her lessons learned, and what keeps her inspired after all these years. So let's get started. Hi there, interior design lovers. Welcome back to the Business of Beautiful Spaces, the podcast where we blend design inspiration with all behind-the-scenes tips and tricks you need to thrive in your business. I'm your host, Laura Thornton, and with over 27 years in this interior design game and running a 7-figure design company, trust me, I've seen it all. I want to be your interior design bestie. I want to help you build the business of your dreams, make more money, and yes, ditch the stress along the way. I've been doing this for a long time, and now I'm sharing my knowledge with all of you, my fellow designers and decorators. All I ask in return is that you like, review, and follow this podcast wherever you listen, so other designers can find us and learn more too. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into making 2025 your best business year yet. Welcome back to another episode of the Business of Beautiful Spaces. Hi, Margaret. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am so good. I'm very excited to talk to you today. Let's dive in and talk about how you got into the interior design world.
Okay. Well, it was a long time ago, and I was in college. I was at a liberal arts college, and I became aware that I was rearranging spaces in my head. And I thought that was kind of strange. And so I started exploring interior design programs. And at that time, there were really only 2 accredited programs in the Southeast. So I remember coming home and talking to my very conservative father and telling him I wanted to transfer to the University of Georgia, which was one of the programs to study interior design. And he didn't know what I was talking about. I truly don't think he knew what interior design was. And he said, no, you need to stay where you are and get your basic liberal arts education, history, English, humanities, that would serve me better in the world. So somehow, I don't remember this part of the story, but somehow I convinced him, and I was at Georgia the next year in the interior design program. And so that was the beginning of my journey.
And when did you start your own firm? Like, when did you start Margaret Donaldson Interiors Luxury Design?
Well, I worked for someone for a few years right out of college, and then I had a partnership with my aunt who had a successful furniture business in Charleston for several years. And then she and I kind of got a divorce in that we weren't seeing eye to eye about some things. So we parted ways, and I was pregnant with my first child. And so I had the decision to make as to whether or not to just stop and be a stay-at-home mom, or start my new business. So I literally started Margaret Donaldson Interiors, which has now been rebranded to MDI Luxury Design. I started it 3 weeks before my first child was born. So my husband gave me good advice. He said, go ahead and do it. If it doesn't work out, you can close the doors. But if you don't do it, you might never do it. And that was really great advice. The following year, after I started, Hurricane Hugo blew through Charleston, destroying much of the city. And so, with a 6, 7 month old business, all of a sudden, everyone in Charleston, I mean, everyone in Charleston needed work done, and all at the same time. So, for a brand new little business just getting off the ground, the hurricane was a big boon for me. So, and just went from there, grew from there.
And you have been like, we were just talking before we started, 35 plus business years, like that you have been
Yes.
in business. That is a massive accomplishment for any business. But you have grown substantially over that amount of time. And I'm wondering if you remember at what point, and I'm sure it had something to do with probably that 6 or 7 month old on your hip. At what point did you need to engage in hiring, and who was your first hire? What role did they
Mm.
play?
Well, I actually did that pretty early on. I've always believed that you should do the tasks that you're best at and that really only you can do. And, I used to pay my own bills. I used to do everything myself, everything, place the orders, all of that. And so when the demand became such that the design was needed and I was the only one that could do that, I realized I should hire someone to do some of the administrative things. Um, Interestingly, just about a month or two ago, I was in a window and door place with the architect, and up walks my very first employee from 30 years ago. I hadn't seen her in, gosh, I don't even know how long ago. I think she moved away, and she knew I was coming in, and she came out. It was quite surreal. But that is something I would recommend when I hear about people who are drowning and overworked and so exhausted. I always advise them to get some help and take off the things that either you don't enjoy doing or you don't do well, and give yourself some time to do the things that you excel at.
Couldn't agree with you more. I always say we wear all the hats, like to
Yeah.
your point. I was paying all the bills. I was doing like you can do all the things and we know we can do it because we did it. But at some point it starts to take up all the hours of the day. Like I used to allot every Friday of the first Friday of every month for all my accounting. But that's a whole day
Mhm.
of not getting billed hours.
Right.
So you
Right.
can start handing these items out, which I think is really important. So you had your first hire who you saw recently. And then what has been some of the challenges in hiring?
Well, today, the challenges in hiring for me, for someone who's been doing it so long, is that there's kind of a generation gap, a little, with the people who are coming out of school, and the fact that I've been doing it so long, and the business world is completely different from when I went into it. I mean, I went to work, I put my head down, I did my job, I got my paycheck, I went home. And that's not the way it works anymore. And I was an employee and had a boss, and now they're team members who've got a leader, and they've got to have, everyone's got to have a lot of fun, and the whole culture is a thing that it was not a thing 30 years ago. It was a job. And it's taken me some adjustment to accept that as a leader of a large firm, um, that if you've got good employees, um, you've got to do for them what they are needing, even though it's not the world I came from. So,
You're the first person who has brought up the generation gap with team, and I have. It was an aha moment for me because it's so true. I had the same thing. Like the girls that work on my team are the same age as my oldest son, and so to have these younger 20s to mid 20s and what they're coming out of school and have learned. Some of it is more efficient. Like AutoCAD was still fairly new when I came out of school, and they,
right.
they'll say to me, "Do you use this?" And I have no idea what they're talking about with the AutoCAD terms, or like they're learning so many different things. But in addition to that, my first job was, to your point, I sat in my cubicle or in my office and head down 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours if it was needed straight, and I hardly spoke to anybody. And we're such a collaborative industry and such a collaborative, but it's funny because it's a mind shift for me. I don't know if you feel the same way. I don't feel as productive as I was, and I used to equate it to age. And now I'm very grateful you said that, because I think I just realized it's because there's so much more in the day about the
Mhm.
talking and the having a laugh or building
Mhm.
this camaraderie, because it really is a lot of hours in a day we're all spending together. So you have these relationships, but I feel like I'm not getting as much done. I know it's also
Mhm.
because we have so much more to do, but I think you just gave me a big aha moment that it's that
Right,
gap where I was so used to just head down, get it done, don't talk. That meant that I had a productive day.
right, right.
So thank you for that.
It's very different. Yes,
Yeah, I just didn't put together that. I mean, clearly I got the generation gap. I see that very reflective every day, but not the how we used to work, and
right.
not sharing and not asking for more efficient ways or learning from somebody else's efficiency. So thank you for that. I know that's off topic.
Oh, no, I'm happy to help.
So your company deals with luxury design specifically, and I know there's got to be some struggles dealing with luxury driven clients who are conditioned to a different level of service. What are some of those challenges that you've come up against?
Well, recognizing who your clients are is extremely important, and educating your team on who your clients are. The luxury client is looking for a certain level of service. When you think about the world that they live in, the hotels they go to, the way they travel, the way they shop for their clothing or for anything, it's not the world I live in, and but you have got to cater to them in that way. Um, it can be challenging at times. For the most part, I've been very fortunate, and MDI's clients have just been lovely people, very gracious. They realize that you're a professional, you know what you're doing, and you're helping them, and they need you. So when they understand that, you get treated better because they need you. They need you. But there are times there can be challenges. And I just feel like every challenge that you encounter, whether it's with the client or with a vendor, with the builder, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn how to do it better next time, figure out what went wrong, and reflect on that and try to avoid that from happening again in the future.
So communication obviously very key for your team and for your client. Do you do a lot of client facing documents? I know this is like random questions by Laura Thornton over here, but like I found I feel like that's something that not everybody does. And I know I've been doing it for about 10 to 12 years. And I found that was a big game changer for me here, that I can send something via email, hope in air quotes that they're going to read it. But I found that the more information I can give them, and even though we're constantly educating our clients and talking all the time to them, but we can give them some information that they can read, and we hope that they read it. But do you find that that's something that's helpful? Because I noticed when I talk about it, I get a lot of feedback, and people are like, "What do you mean? What's a client-facing document? What are you handing over?" And I'm just curious your take on that, if that's something you've implemented in your
Um,
business.
Well, I am curious what you mean specifically by a client-facing document. I
So
mean,
we do like a welcome guide if when they inquire, and then when they engage, it's the what to expect guide. So we will send them all the things that they can expect to have, like we call them internally love letters, but like a review every Thursday of their project and progress reports. Then we would do, if it's a renovation, we send them a renovation guide. So it also has like tips and tricks and what time we arrive and maybe clean your air filters every month, like just things that.
wow.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't think we're doing a very good job of that. It sounds like you've really got that under control, and it sounds like something clients would really love. I don't think we are doing a good job of that. We do have weekly updates to our clients. Each of the designers on Monday mornings is responsible for reviewing the job and sending an email out to their clients saying what we did last week, what we're going to be working on this week. They're also reviewing the time billing for the previous week to make sure it's all justifiable and there's nothing we need to adjust out, that it, wasn't really appropriate to bill the client for something we spent time on or whatnot. So Monday mornings are a job review and communication time with the client. We just started that this in 2024, and I have to say the designers did not love this idea initially, but then they have seen how the designer has responded, and there's always a question back or a thank you, I didn't know that, or whatnot, or oh, I meant to ask you about. It's also a time if we've sent out proposals and we haven't heard from them, we can just sort of ping them a little bit on that and say, last week we sent you those proposals. We'll get those ordered just as soon as we hear back from you, that sort of thing. So that weekly touch base with the client has proven to be a really valuable tool. It really has.
Yeah, it
So I
really
do
is
think
for
we
us
need to
too.
step up a welcoming document, and we do have a financial document that we give them really when we send our engagement letter out, sort of the financial, how the financials work. And we have a design process document that we send out that sort of walk them through a new build or a large renovation, the steps that we know we're going to be taking. Um, that document is something I want to improve on and put some more visuals in it. It's a lot of words, and I do find that people don't like to read a lot of words. It's a little overbearing, and I think what I've learned recently is if you can break things down with some, because people learn differently. Some people are readers and absorb information. Some people want to hear it, speak it, and that's how they learn it. But some people need the visual um, component to that too. So typically, I will, on a new prospective client, I walk through the process with them. So they're hearing it verbally. And I have this written document, but what I'm lacking is the document that has some visuals in it to break up the words a little bit. But no, I think there's the more documents you can have to provide the client, the better. And that is something we're working on.
Well, the good news is I can save you a step. We give away the welcome guide. So I'll send you the link, but if anyone's listening, it is in the show notes, not the episode notes, the show notes. So it lives there and you can just manipulate it
Wonderful.
with
Thank you.
your logos and things. But that was a game changer for us for sure, because it sets the tone for our clients. But it is prettied up. So we take every opportunity even in our contract, to your point about saying it was really, wordy, it was like 10 pages long. So I ended up making it pretty with breaking up the sections. I added in some of our work into the side, like into the photos of it. So that way it wasn't just this generic contract of word, like all these pages. So this way it was a little more, to your point, visually beautiful. They could see some of our additional work. Plus, it broke up all the sections. So if somebody wants to walk away for a minute, come back, it's like, what page was I on? There was no marker. So yeah, we did the
Right.
same thing here because it actually every time I feel like it's a reflection of us. So All of our
Right.
documents look the same. It's just whatever the title is, and then they can have them and keep them in order.
But I do think presentation in this business is very, very important. Everything that you put in front of the client needs to present on a high level, everything. And so we've been working on improving that as well, just looking at everything we have and how does it present. So,
Yeah. The image is paramount with this industry, right? Like it sets you apart.
yes.
And if you have something, if they're inquiring to 3 or 4 other local designers, but you're the one that comes back with a welcome guide or here's how we work and it includes your process, I do think that would make any designer stand out over
Hmm.
somebody else. So, or I'm hoping anyway, fingers crossed that that's
Right.
that's what's
Right.
been happening. But I mean, I know we have a lot of less seasoned designers, less seasoned than you and I are, and I'm wondering if you remember, you know, I'm going to talk from personally. Like I remember when I first started I charged hourly, and
Mhm.
I, used to, make a list or whatever of all my hours, and then keep it. And then when I'd get to, doing the invoice, I would shave off a couple hours here and shave off. Oh, I talk too much, so then I would shave off a few here, shave off a few there. Which I know, thankfully, that world is changing, but we're still so hourly based. And I'm wondering if you remember at what point you're doing your hours, you're figuring it out, and started to actually charge your worth. Now, I'm assuming I shouldn't assume that you weren't always doing that, but I know a lot of us cringed or wasn't sure or how much should we charge and how much. At what point do you remember being like, this is what I'm worth and I have no apologies and this is what I charge for my time?
Well, I mean, that's really a twofold question. So one is talking about getting comfortable with what you're worth, and then the time billing component of it. So I'll talk about being comfortable with what you're worth first. When you think about what you know as a designer and what you're going to impart to that client and the mistakes you are going to avoid for them, you are worth a lot. You really are worth a lot. And I don't know why designers have such a hard time grasping that and seeing their value. Um, but you really do bring so much to the project. I mean, there are things the architect does so well, but then there are things that the architect doesn't do as well as the designer does. We go deeper in our questionings and our probing with how they're going to use the space, and realize a room is too small for everything that they wanted to do in that space. And isn't it better to find that out before the house begins construction and that sort of thing? So there's I don't know. I just think you have to have confidence in yourself, and every time you hear yourself say something to a client that you know is of value, that you know they didn't know that, and you are helping them and you're saving them from that heartache, that's a reason why you charge what you do, and you're worth it. You're worth it. I mean, you think what some of the tradespeople charge, I mean, repair people charge to come to your house and make a repair, and equate it to that, and you are valuable. You've got to believe in yourself first, and then your client will believe in you and see your value too. So, the second part of that question was about time billing. And I know what you mean about shaving off time and this and that and everything. So, we we this past year in 2024 was the first year we started implementing minimum billable hours per week. I was pretty loosey goosey about it all prior to 2024, and we just recorded the billable hours, and we didn't record the other time. And we realized we needed to see what was happening in all of the time that was spent by our team members, so we could evaluate where we were spending too much time, where we needed to tighten our belt and improve efficiencies. So we began recording all of our time, billable or non-billable, and we set up categories for the non-billable time, and we learned some things. We learned some valuable things. We learned we were spending way too much time in rep meetings, just an extraordinary amount of time with reps in our office, hours and hours each week. And of course, it's wonderful to sit down and learn from a rep and see the products and all of that. But we started, we can't, we've got to have some billable hours in here and not just be talking to our reps all the time. So, by recording all of the time, billable and non-billable, it really gave us some data about where we needed to tighten our belt quite a bit. And we do question whether the way we phrase it is when we review a client's billable time, the designer is to review it each week when she's doing the weekly update for herself and her design assistant, and be comfortable with the hours that are billed. Are these justifiable to the client? If the client really probes and asks to see a detailed bill, and I want to know exactly what was done in detail, if we go into the software and read the actual notes, is this justifiable? What we described we were doing and the amount of time that it took. And if it's not justifiable, then we need to understand why. Is someone spending 3 hours looking for a trim for a pillow, and we can't bill the client for 3 hours looking for a trim that maybe can only bill 30 minutes for? Then we need to train that person to, and let that person know we can't do that. We can't run a business like that. So understanding what's happening is a way to being able to improve the situation. It's really, again, it's not been something that the designers have welcomed, but from an ability to analyze what's going on, it's been really, really critical.
I've had the same issue here. I've been doing it for so long. It's rote. I have my own system. Then when I brought in a team, it was really important for me to track their time to see how, A, if they're getting more efficient, B, where the hours are going. And to your point, the reps wasn't the big issue. I found it was other like random things that I didn't expect. Like when we got to presentation and we were putting together the presentations and like that, we were not charging enough time for. You think, oh, an hour and a half, put the presentation together. It was taking upwards of 10 to 11 to 12 hours putting together
Oh.
our presentation packages, like pulling them all
Mhm.
together, all the pricing, summarizing. Like we were not factoring in enough time. And so we were literally losing
Mhm.
that profit on those
Mhm.
hours. And so
Mhm.
the data analytics that you get back with time tracking, regardless if you're charging hourly, flat rate, or a square foot model, you have to be doing your hours. You have to see where the time is going. That's one thing I know people always write to me and say, oh, I don't time track. And it's like, how do you know if people are getting better? How do you know if you're more efficient? How do you know how to bill if you're not knowing how long it's taking you? So imperative. So my question, it sounds like you have a system or a program you're using to track your time?
Yes, we use Studio Designer
Yeah.
for the writing proposals, and we track our time in
Yeah.
Studio. And everybody does it a little differently. Some people will start the clock in Studio when they're doing something, and then you can stop it, and it just automatically records it. Most people keep a little notebook at their desk and just jot down 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. And you get so interrupted and distracted during the course of the day. It's a constant battle, really, to get all that. But we do require that it be entered each day. That's another hurdle we had to overcome. It was like some people were entering it at the end of the week, and you just can't remember I mean, there's no way you can remember what you're doing. And so we now require it be done at the end of the day, with the caveat that absolutely by 10 a.m. the next day. I mean, sometimes people are walking out the door at 3 to go on an appointment, and going from the appointment out to dinner and this and that. So as long as it's the previous day is in by 10 a.m. The following day, that's okay. And we have preset time billing categories of what it goes into, whether it's drawings and layouts, whether it's design development, whether it's project management, whether it's a client meeting. They're just maybe 5 different categories that it goes into. So you just have to get it in the right category. But then in the notes, that's where I ask people to really give a description of what they were doing. I mean, if somebody was selecting or pulling, if a client, I mean, you've got to give me more detail. You were selecting what,
Yeah.
pulling for what, that sort of thing. And so we've been working on that, and it's getting much better. And the detail is there should we need it. We don't provide that detail to the client. We have it so that we can justify the time. And but then what the client receives is just for each month, it would just have a total number of hours in design development and a total number of hours in project management and whatnot. So but occasionally a client will say, could I see the detailed bill? And I would never say no. So I need those notes to be in there accurately and um, for them to make sense. So it's not something designers love to do, but it sure is important. And like you said,
Yeah.
if you are not time tracking, you have no idea. Um, I mean, I guess you just look in your bank account and see whether or not you have money, but you don't know where, like you just said about your something that took 10 or 12 hours and you were probably only billing 3 hours for it. I mean, that's just a loss.
Yeah. Because
Hmm.
it was me doing it forever and always, and then brought people in. And so I was assuming it was getting done in the same amount of time that it was taking for me to do it, and it wasn't. And so you won't have that data. You don't have that to analyze to see where you're, it's a bucket where there's a hole. Because if you're losing money there and you're doing how many projects a year, that is a lot of profit loss.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And to your point with the team, like when I know that I pay them for 37 and a half hours a week and I can only bill for 20, I always say, how would you like it if I only paid you half of your salary this week? Because I cannot bill. I don't know what you did for the other 17 hours. So that's also a hole in my bucket.
Well,
So,
right.
yeah.
And and that's something that I think creative people um don't really want to think about. I mean, they're creative, they're artists, they're doing beautiful things, and you're talking to them about the nuts and bolts of business.
Yeah.
And they're sort of like, "Oh, uh that doesn't affect me." And I do think you have to um help these creative people understand we're trying to provide the place for them to be creative and use their creativity for the benefit of the clients. But it is still, at the end of the day, a business that has to run, and we've got to keep the lights on and you know make all the payments for everything. And most creatives, that's just sort of not in their wheelhouse.
It's true. And it's not just keep the lights on, it's keep the lights on, pay everybody, and still make money into the business. Because that's why we're in business, is to make like that's why we're doing it, is so that we are making money for ourselves for the future, and so that these people have jobs to come back to on Monday.
Right.
So that's a great leeway to this question, because there's only so many hours in a workday. And
Hmm.
I remember, like, when my business was smaller, and I was just doing design time billing for the hour, at some point you tap out with how many hours you can bill for in a week. And so, unless you're raising your rates a little bit every year, I remember the game changer for my business was when we started actually selling product and finishes and customizing items and making things happen in my business, other than just the floor plans and designing. Not that it's a just, but we took it to the next level. And that was where personally my business made a big shift. And that's where I really saw that design business could be profitable and could
Mhm.
provide for a good life. And so I'm wondering if do you sell product, and is that something that you found too, that you were limited with just hours and it was the implementation of procurement that really changed the business for you?
I've always sold product, and I can't imagine doing design fees only because, like you said, you've only got so many hours in the day. So there you go. That's what you're going to make. I mean, there's your maximum,
Yeah.
whatever your rate is, and you're capped out. So I've always sold product. Not, I've never thought about it as really selling product because I wanted to make more money. It was selling product was for the service of the client. You're making window treatments for their window, you're reupholstering their chair, you're furnishing their living room, and we order the furniture and have it installed, delivered into their home. So the product, there's a markup on the product, and but there are a lot of hours
Hmm.
associated with the procurement of the product. So when you're hourly, you have your design hours, but you've also got procurement hours. I've got director of procurement and operations. So once the deposit comes in, and we get 100% deposit. So once the money comes in and it goes to ordering, then that leaves the design department and it goes to the procurement department. But they bill at a lower rate than the design. But in my engagement letter, I say that, all time spent by MDI working on your behalf will be billed at an hourly rate. And then I spell out the um, different staff members, whether it's me or whether it's the lead designer, design assistant, director of operations, so on and so forth. There are different rates for different positions, but different people are going to be working on your project at different times. I mean, sometime in the beginning, sometimes I'm working on it for a little bit, and then it shifts to the lead designer. Then the design assistant does a lot of the work along the way under the direction of the lead designer. But then once the money comes in, those proposals shift over to procurement, and they're at a lower rate. So yeah, there's a lot to having product because there is not only the markup on it, but it is the additional time that you are billing for that product.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But it also allows you, like, especially with luxury design, like they get one of a kind pieces. Everything is customized. You can do,
That's
like, you
right.
can really take your business to a different level while
Oh,
helping
right.
profit margin for sure. Um,
Right.
so I like what you said there because it really was showing me that you have a lockdown process in your business, like where it flows and how it flows too, which is paramount when running any business. I think even just when you're a solopreneur, I think it's paramount to have processes in your business. But it sounds like yours, we have a very similar setup of how it works, and no one touches, like when it gets to procurement, that's when it's now no longer a design and off it goes, and now somebody else manages it, and that's at a different rate. Now, how soon in your business did you realize process was important for a profitability and, obviously being efficient?
I've always liked processes and organization. I mean, I think one of the things that is unusual about me being a designer is I really do like the business side, and that's not typically the case with creatives. So, I mean, from the very beginning, I was all about organization and processes and um, figuring out how to streamline things and all of that. So um, there was a period of time where I think I got a little too process driven, and I was kind of choking the designers with too much process and not allowing them to um, almost run their own businesses in a sense within my business. I mean, ultimately, the lead designer is responsible to their client which is MDI's client, but for everything that goes on. And there was a period of time where I had so much process that it was too restrictive and it was too spoon fed. It was a step by step by step. And what happened was I was eliminating the critical thinking that is necessary for someone to take responsibility for the job. I mean, the way I sort of shifted the thought in my mind was these designers need to consider that their clients as if it were their own business. And I mean, they have to function within the standards of MDI and, what we think is honest and ethical and right and that sort of thing. But ultimately, the whole job should be their responsibility. So I try to let the processes be a aid to them rather than a restriction. But when you have a large team and you have multiple people who need to get to some of the same information, there's got to be some consistency and uniformity in how you do things so that you can do it. So we're adjusting right now. We've implemented the use of Asana. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
something
Yep.
you're familiar
Yep.
with.
We use it too. Yeah.
Love it. And we're almost over the finish line with getting everyone sort of onboarded on it. And so it's a couple of people have sort of gone kicking and screaming, but if I want to take a look at what's going on in the various projects, I need to be able to hop into Asana and look at the different projects and see what the incompleted tasks are and be able to take a look at the workflow in general. So if people aren't using it, there's missing information.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who doesn't know what Asana is, it's a great planning tool that you can plug all of your systems into, and then it will populate. Let's say you have a team, it'll populate that once one task is done, it'll send it over to the next person that this is done now, it's on their desk. And then it will show, like Margaret's saying, she can tap into whatever project and see where they are in their process and where are we bottlenecking, who's not using it or who's not checking it off because now the next person isn't getting there. So it's this really great system that allows you to implement your process, but also it kind of starts to do it for you. So you can see where things are falling. And obviously that depends on which version you're paying for. We started with the free version and that was great. And as the teams grew and we got bigger, we definitely needed to engage in having it start to do all the like it would direct who was going to get what next. Like
I think
automation. It's an automation tool.
I think there's a level to Asana that we don't know about yet. We're
Oh,
not
I'm sure I'm sure it's the same. I'm not using it to its probably full potential.
because what you're talking about does sounds like we're not there yet. But
Okay, you will be.
what we
Yeah.
what we've been able to use it for has been phenomenal. So I can only imagine how much more it can do for us. So I
Yeah.
think that again, in this design world, this interior design world, there are many programs, software, and tools that you can implement. And it's very easy to just say, well, this is how I've always done it. And so I'm just going to keep doing it this way. Well, I used to manually write all my checks and put them in the envelope and write the address and put the stamp on it and mail it off to the client, to the vendor. That's not very efficient. And so you've got to be open to change. Gosh, I remember when your letterhead and your stationery was so important, the weight of the paper and everything, because every one of your proposals was hand delivered, was given to a client in person in a beautiful folder that cost a lot of money.
Mm.
And, because it was part of this presentation of these things you want them to purchase. And we don't use any of that anymore. I've got boxes of these folders that are just, I mean, everything is digital. And we're just paperless almost. So things change, and you have to be willing to adapt and not be afraid of it. And the change is good, if it is going to improve things and help you become more efficient. But most people don't want to change.
It's true.
Uh,
Well,
but
look at the AI world, what's happening right now, right? People are afraid of AI and you can very quickly fall behind. And it's one of those things where I use it every day and we're using it all the time. Not for renderings and things, but just like sometimes finessing an email or like as
Mhm.
updating our email templates, things like that. But we are using it, we are engaging with it. But
Mhm.
a couple of years ago when it came out, everyone was, is it going to take our jobs? But AutoCAD did the same thing in our industry. When AutoCAD came out, every drafter in the world thought their jobs were gone. Like
Yeah.
it's like anything. You have to stay current, but it is a bit scary at first. And I'm not gonna
Well,
pretend that I'm an AI specialist. So not, but I'm
no.
trying not to get left behind.
Right. Well, I remember when the internet came out. Now I'm really showing
Yeah.
my age now. And all of a sudden, people had access to, go on Schumacher or
Mhm.
Scalamandre, and they could view things. And I'm like, oh, well, that's the end of the design. I mean, who's going to need an interior designer anymore?
Yeah.
And
Still
what
do.
really happened was the clients realized they had access to everything, and they realized how confusing it was, and they needed you more than ever before.
Yeah. They don't even know where to start. Thank God
No.
that they still need us. Well, Margaret, I could honestly talk to you for hours because this is what we do, and it's so fabulous that we're still able to do it after 27 years and 35 plus
Yeah,
years. But
right.
where can listeners find you? Your social media, your website, where can they find you if they want to follow all your beautiful designs?
Sure. We are at mdiluxurydesign.com. That's the website, and that is also the handle for Instagram, MDI Luxury Design.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today. You've been
Yeah.
a fountain of information. I do love hearing about how other people have made it work for all the time that they've been in business.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
So we'll stop.